Yeah, welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Got a pretty good show here for you today. Going to talk probably the biggest story in the NBA so far this offseason, and that is the suspension of Ja Morant for 25 games to open the upcoming season. But before we get to that, you know what time it is if you haven't already. Please go ahead, click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell right here on YouTube so you can be aware whenever new content comes out and you can stay up to date with that. If you want the audio only version of the podcast, open up your audio podcast platform, type in the Format Podcast in the search bar. We should come up. You can go ahead and subscribe right there. Please give us that 5-star review if you enjoy the content, and make sure you share it with other people you know who enjoy sports media but might be looking for a slightly different voice and a different take on the stories you always hear. You know what happens when you do those things. We rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. Now let's get right to it. Okay, so Ja Morant suspended 25 games to start the upcoming NBA season. Why was he suspended 25 games? Because last season he had two different instances of being out there on Instagram Live with a firearm, a handgun, a pistol. First was the incident in Shotgun Willie's, which we talked about on previous episodes, out in Colorado following the loss to the Nuggets. He was suspended 8 games by the Grizzlies for that, went to New York to the NBA headquarters, talked to Adam Silver, basically let him know, hey, listen, this is not the kind of guy I am, and we're going to move forward from this. I apologize. You're going to see that this is not me. The gun wasn't mine, blah, blah, blah. So basically, he gave Adam Silver everything that Adam Silver wanted to hear and everything that sounded good. And, as a guy who had never offended before or, been in any trouble since he's been in the league, that was made public, and obviously we know now that there were other incidents which kind of got swept under the rug. We've talked about that. We won't get into that here, but as a guy who has never been in any public issues, Ja Morant has he went and he talked to him, and he made it all sound good, and so he got the 8-game suspension, and then he came back. Quick aside to that, this has nothing to do with on the court. This is off the court. This is one of the things that people give LeBron James so much credit for. And in fairness, I got to give him credit for this here too. In 20 years, going into his 21st season, a guy that, basically came from hard scrabble circumstances, unlike Ja Morant, single parent household. Basically, he had every situation that leads to negative statistics in the life of black males in this country placed on him. LeBron James has managed to avoid any controversy off the court for his entire 20-year career, and that realistically is very commendable. I got to give credit where it's due. This is a guy who never has gotten in even a hint of trouble off the court. There have been some ridiculous accusations against him, and there's been some other things that have never really been brought up, but he has kept his nose clean the whole time, despite some of the most incredible amount of media attention ever placed on an athlete maybe in the history of the world, right? Obviously, social media, 24-hour news cycle, blah, blah, blah. Now, let me be clear, that has absolutely nothing to do with LeBron, what LeBron does or doesn't do on the court, but in terms of off the court, it is so commendable that he has managed to avoid all impropriety. And realistically, when they give the rookie summit, LeBron should be one of the guys they bring in there to talk to these young fellas about how to stay out of trouble and how to avoid all the pitfalls that this life of attention and large amounts of money and fame can have you fall into. Anyway, back to Ja Morant. So he gets suspended for the 8 games with the Grizzlies last season, and then shortly after his season ended in the first round of the playoffs, then he gets caught on Instagram Live with a pistol again. I think he was, him and his boy were riding in the car. They were listening to some hip hop music, and often we know hip hop music can glorify the violence and drugs and guns and that type of culture that many of the artists of hip hop music, that type of environment that many of them come from. And so Ja was rapping along to the song, riding with his boy, and he appears to flash another handgun again. Now, his camp came out later and said that it was a toy, and we went through that. No one believes it was a toy. But yeah, so as a result, Adam Silver and the NBA did what we assume to be a very thorough investigation into that situation. And they yesterday, it depends on when you're listening to this, but Friday released their what would be their response to Ja Morant's second transgression with a firearm, and that was a 25-game suspension. And let's go ahead and listen to Stephen A. Smith and what he had to say about this, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Not surprised at all. I've been saying for weeks that it was going to be about 25 games, and sure enough, that's about right. Unfortunately, this is a suspension that Ja Morant deserved. And the suspension that he received that I think he deserved is not because of the quote unquote mistakes or his actions or whatever. It's because it was in the aftermath of him meeting face to face with Adam Silver, assuring Adam Silver that he appreciated the significance and the seriousness of the situation the first go round when he was only suspended 8 games.
Right.
And then turned around and found himself in that position again, which means that Adam Silver felt betrayed by Ja Morant because Ja Morant looked him in the face and told him one thing and went behind his back and did another and got busted. And so there's a lesson in all of that. You know, we could sit up there and we could be stars. We can have money, et cetera, but we all answer to somebody. And when you answer to other people, what you don't do is look them in their face and tell them a lie and misrepresent yourself in that way, because you're going to come back and ultimately pay a price for that. That's all I have to say.
So that was Stephen A. on the matter. And before we go ahead and unpack a little bit my thoughts on it, let me give you Ja Morant's statement in response to the suspension. Quote, "I've had time to reflect and realize how much hurt I've caused. I want to apologize to the NBA, the Grizzlies, my teammates, and the city of Memphis. To Adam Silver, Zach Kleiman, and Robert Pera, who gave me the opportunity to be a professional athlete and have supported me, I'm sorry for the harm I've done. To the kids who look up to me, I'm sorry for failing you as a role model. I promise I'm going to be better. To all of my sponsors, I'm going to be a better representation of our brands. And to all of my fans, I'm going to make it up to you, I promise. I'm spending the offseason and my suspension continuing to work on my own mental health and decision making. I'm also going to be training so that I'm ready to go when I can be back on the court. I know my teammates are going to hold it down, and I'm so sorry I won't be out there with you at the beginning of the season. I hope you'll give me the chance to prove to you over time I'm a better man than what I've been showing you," unquote. Now, great statement, Ja. I'm sure your team helped you craft that. Okay, no problem. That's what these people are there for. You know, your PR and your agents and et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure they helped you craft that. My thing is this: no one believes what you're saying, Ja, because I'm pretty sure that that's something that you said when you sat there and spoke to Adam Silver, NBA commissioner, face to face. I'm sure this is what you said. And you went out there and you did the same knucklehead thing. No one believes you. Me personally, I think I would have suspended him for at least half the season, 41 games. Now, I get it. You have to deal with precedent. And maybe some people would have thought that was egregious. But the old saying is, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. There's no reason for Ja to be out there acting like this. Now, again, I'm not anti-firearm. You live in Tennessee, you can have your gun. That's fine. But knowing what's going on in the African-American community, knowing what's going on in America overall when it comes to firearms and death and violence, and knowing the influence you have over young people, there's no reason for you to be on Instagram Live flashing a handgun. And even with more selfish reasons at mind, even with more selfish things, at the front of mind, the fact is you cost yourself like $50 million this season because you wanted to play with guns on Instagram Live and try to look like something you're not. Why, Ja? There's no reason for that. Because you're going to miss 25 games, you're not going to be in a position where you can make an all-NBA team. You're not going to be in a position where you can be an MVP. So all these awards to which you may be entitled, now you can't get those. That's going to affect your ability to possibly get a Supermax contract down the road. That's going to affect your possibility to win postseason awards, and all that's going to affect your money. Of course, not to mention the 25-game suspension, which is going to cut into your check. I think you were scheduled to make $33 million this year. I think he's probably going to end up making around 20 or 22. So a lot of money is going to be lost because he had to go out there and do this. And I really don't get it. I really don't get it. Now, the allure of the streets is one thing for someone who never made it out or didn't have the opportunities that Ja Morant had. And again, we know Ja Morant, from what we know, comes from the suburbs. He comes from what seems to be a stable two-parent household. He wasn't out there in those environments for the most part, at least. There's no reason for you to be out here trying to act like a goon. I just don't get it. Now, back to what I was saying, 41 game suspension would have been what I would have given him, because I think he really needs to be hit hard. He really needs to realize just how much money he stands to lose by not being in it, by doing idiotic things. And I think when we talk about these things, right, for the most part, when you hit guys' pocketbooks, that's what really makes the wake-up call, when you hit guys' pocketbooks. Because to us, regular people who would never see $33 million, well, if I still got 20, hey, that'd be great. But if you're used to, that type of life and living on a certain amount of money, and then, roughly a third of it gets taken away, well, you'll feel it. I mean, shoot, if you make $21 an hour and you get bumped down to $14 an hour, that's a third, right? Yeah, you get bumped down to $14 an hour, you're gonna feel it. So I don't think it matters who it is. You take that type of a pay cut, you're gonna feel it. And so that Ja needs to feel it. Now, the question is, what's he gonna do in terms of how he gets back in the league? Because part of the things Adam Silver said when he announced the 25-game suspension is that prior to his return to play, Morant will be required to formulate and fulfill a program with the league that directly addresses the circumstances that led him to repeat this destructive behavior. I think that's pretty interesting, because it was kind of vague. So I'm not exactly sure what this program that he'll be required to formulate and fulfill with the league, what that consists of. I guess maybe we'll find out in the coming days and months what that may be. And let's say he doesn't, for whatever reason. Let's say he completes the 25-game suspension, but he doesn't fulfill this said program. Is that something that's going to push the suspension out further? Don't know. Definitely waiting to see. But at the end of the day, Ja, this is what happens when you want to be something you're not. This is what happens when you want to be in the street and you have other options. Again, 25 games to me came off light, but of course you have to think about precedent. And even if you had hit him harder, the Players Association would have come back and they would have fought hard, because the Players Association has already come out and stated that they found the 25-game suspension to be too heavy-handed. But that is their job. They have to represent the players. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it. So what I want to know from you, what are your thoughts on it? Do you think Ja Morant deserved a heavier suspension? Do you think he deserved less? Do you think he did anything wrong? What do you think the conditions are going to be? And do you think he's going to fulfill them? Love to hear that. Leave it in the comments section. I'll be back with you next episode. And I'm out. Peace.